everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take a DNG RAW photograph taken with my DJI Inspire 2 drone and the X5S camera, which is a micro four thirds sensor, and process it with the new Aurora HDR 2019. We're going to take a look at a couple of the presets and then dig into the filters applied with those presets and show you what's possible. One of the things that I mentioned in the article is that the DNG RAW files from the DJI drones can be a challenge to produce good-looking photographs. So now let's take a look and see how Aurora HDR 2019 does with this challenging format. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the image. We can either do that from here or we can go up to the File menu and choose Open. I've put a folder on the desktop and there's our DNG RAW file. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to tell us what image it's selected. I'm going to click on the drop down. We're going to leave color denoise on, and we're not going to check chromatic aberration reduction. The next thing to do is to click on the Create HDR button. And this is going to take a couple of moments here to process it and give us its first cut of this RAW file. So this is what Aurora 2019 has given us as a starting place with this DNG RAW file from my Inspire 2 drone, and it looks really good. Now let's take a look at the presets that we can apply to this and then how to fine-tune those presets. When you first start up the application, you are shown this series of presets. If the collection area down below is not showing, come up here to the upper right and click on this little button right here. This is your looks panel. If I click it off, it looks like that. If I click it on, it looks like that. What I want to show you is the landscape presets. So to get there, we'll come down to the collections button right here. Click on it. This shows us all the different collections that we have available, and we'll choose landscape. When you look down here, you'll see that we have these different presets available. Some of them have the little star highlighted. That means that I've clicked on it because I want it to show up in favorites. And I'll show you how to get to favorites in just a moment. So this is what this looks like with the realistic landscape applied. Let's take a look and see what enhanced looks like. We can always dial back how much of this particular look is applied by doing that. Now this is the bright, and again I'm going to dial it back. This is the warm landscape, and I'm going to dial it back to about 20%. This is what the cool landscape looks like. Again, I'm going to dial it back, and I'm going to come back to realistic, dialing it back. Let me show you how to get to favorites. If we click on the collections again and we choose the favorites right here, it's just going to show us the ones that have the star applied to it. Now the next thing let's do is let's adjust the horizon. You can see that the gimbal was a little off on the drone when this was shot. So to do that, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on the transform button. I'm going to come down to rotate, and I'm going to put my cursor over where the 0 is. I'm going to click and hold down, and I'm going to drag to the left, and you'll see how that's going to start changing the orientation. So that's a more accurate horizon. Now I'm going to come down to scale. I'm going to click on it and drag to the right because I need to scale up. And you'll see that this is going to zoom into the image. 57 or 58 was great. Now that I've got the horizon set correctly, I'm going to go up to the crop tool, and I'm going to come over here. You'll see that when I click the crop tool, we have these different options available. And I'm going to click on original and put it to freeform so that I can crop it without having to worry about a specific ratio. I'm going to drag this to the left a bit. I'm going to drag this up and click done. Now let's come over to the filters and look at those. What you may notice is that the filters that are active are highlighted: color, HDR enhance, image radiance, adjustable gradient, and vignette. These were the filters that the preset applied in specific amounts. Now let's take a look at color. So color has saturation, vibrance, and color contrast. So what saturation does is that saturates or desaturates all the colors in the image. If we push that all the way to the right, you'll see that that's overly saturated everything. If I bring it all the way to the left, you'll see it hasn't quite turned it black and white, but it's desaturated the color significantly. Let's bring that up. So vibrance is different than saturation in that it will go through selectively and find the colors that are less saturated or less vibrant, and then only increase or decrease those depending on the direction we go with the slider. So if I slide that to the right all the way, it's gone through and made all the colors that were not highly saturated much more saturated. And if I push it all the way to the left, it does the opposite. I'm going to go with about 11. Color contrast just enhances the contrast between colors. So if I push this all the way to the right, it does that. So we just want a little bit of this, really light. So now, before we go on to the HDR Enhance filter, let's turn off the collections window at the bottom by coming up to this button in the upper right area, the looks panel button, and let's click on it, and that'll turn that off, and that'll let us see more of the image. Okay, so now on to HDR Enhance. So HDR Clarity adds more detail. Probably the simplest way to show you is watch this area down near the barn here. When I punch that way up, you'll see that it's going to add more detail information there. I'll go ahead and turn off the filter, and you can see with this particular image, we're going to set it to 0. I don't need it to add any more detail there. Now let's take a look at the Smart Structure slider. This is another AI intelligent control. And this slider will automatically adjust the details, structure, and sharpness in the photograph as we drag it from 0 to the right. Let's push this all the way to the right. And so that's with the Smart Structure pushed all the way to the right. It's too sharp, too much detail. Let's bring it back about here. And as I say in the article, you're going to learn how to use these filters by playing with them, determining what looks best for you. You're the artist. You're the photographer. You decide how you want it to look and make it look that way. Now let's move down to the HDR microstructure. And this amplifies the micro detail of the image. We need to be careful with how much of this we apply because at some point it can get very noisy. The amount determines how much of the structure is applied. Softness affects the general softness and realism of the photo. Moving the slider to the left will cause the image to become very finely detailed and unrealistic. And so then let's go back in our history to here, and that'll get us back to the original